All right. Welcome, everybody. I feel like we're in a bit of a classroom situation where slowly and surely people will enter as we go along. But welcome to this fantastic talk brought to you by She Said So and YouTube Music. We have an exciting, jam-packed hour for everyone watching about the future of the music business. And we're going to be discussing everything from a marketing perspective, releasing music from both industry behind the scene, but also for artists in front of the camera or in front of the microphone, however you want to see it and say it. And then at the end, we're also going to have some time for you to ask questions. So if anything comes to mind throughout the session, do not be shy. There's a place for you to also ask the question in the comment box, but also at the end, and we will try to answer as many as possible. And what I wanted to get out of the way before we actually get started and get to know our fantastic speakers is that someone from She Said So will actually in the chat put a Google Doc link that you can click on, and we can use that as sort of a networking tool today. So you can leave your details in there, and you can also see other viewers' details. And this is a way for you to not only see who else is watching alongside with you, but also to connect with them. I hope that you find today inspiring and you leave this talk with a bright intel and a little bit of a hope of where things are headed. And what I'm going to do is, instead of myself introducing our fantastic speakers, I will give them the opportunity to tell you who they are, what they do, and then we'll kick off. Gigi, if we could start with you, tell us about yourself.
Oh, okay. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you are right now. I'm sitting in Los Angeles. I'm not in Europe. I run the Marymount Institute, which looks at creative industry change. I teach at UCLA's Herb Alpert School of Music, and I co-founded Amplify Music, which is a conference pulling together about 30 different countries of people trying to change music locally. So glad to talk about that as we get going. But thanks for having me in this conversation.
Thank you so much, Gigi. Moving on to Tasha. I'm going as I'm seeing people viewed, by the way, just so you know, that's my order for today.
Hi guys. I'm Tasha Demi. I'm the co-founder of marketing agency 22. We actually launched earlier this year, so we are a lockdown baby. Me and my business partner have both worked in the music industry for over 10 years. I started off in like the TV journalism world, kind of creating music shows around all your favorite music artists, I guess, and then moved into record label world, started over at Universal Music and was there for about 4 or 5 years, and then I moved over to Sony Music. My most recent role at a label was to help launch the Since 93 imprint, which was part of RCA Records in the UK. And whilst I was there, I worked on a number of kind of breakthrough domestic and international campaigns, had an amazing time there. And then in 2020, just felt like a change was needed. And we wanted to launch 22 to essentially reform conventional marketing methods and just be a modern, I guess, a modern company to represent the new music industry. And here we are today.
Congratulations on that, Tasha. Very impressive, especially in lockdown. Moving on, our next panelist speaker, Francesca.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. This is indeed a fantastic opportunity to make new friends, actually, apart from Chiara, that obviously I have known for many, many years. I started my career in London in publishing, end of things. And I will cut a very long story short. At the moment, I'm managing director of Peer Music Italy, and I also manage PS7 Productions, which is a label. So I have a good handle on both of these sides of the business. And I have already eyed a few questions in there, which I'm very happy to contribute on. On others, I'll be very, very happy to listen to other people's experience because I'm not so well versed in them. Thank you again.
Brilliant. Thank you, Francesca. And last but definitely not least, we have Chiara.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, and great to join this panel this evening or this morning for Gigi. I'm Chiara. I have been working at YouTube for more than 9 years. I feel a bit like when I say that, it feels like an entire age has passed by because it has been really long time. I am part of the music team, and in particular, I look after label relations in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And prior to that, I used to work in a digital aggregator and distributor based out of Milan. So I have been working from the very early days in the music industry.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much. So as you can tell, we are talking to some people that really know what's going on in this business model, this industry, and also have an idea of how this will be looking moving forward. For those people who have just joined, if you see She Said So posting a Google Doc link in the chat, just know that that is a spreadsheet where you can leave your details in order to network with other people viewing, because, you know, we're trying to build a community and a hub and give you a tool for you to connect with others. Now, before we get into it, I do know that an hour is not long. So as we go through the questions, I will sometimes pick people to speak on specific topics that I know they will know a lot of, but I definitely want to go through all the subjects that we've highlighted for today. But before we get into the business side of things, I would like to know, Francesca, can you tell me how the last year has been for you? It's been very tumultuous for everybody, but what has been maybe a hurdle or maybe an epiphany or something that has impacted the way you do your job?
It's an incredibly good question, and something I've been really reflecting upon these last few days with some colleagues. I don't want to be doom and gloom. Every one of us is perfectly aware of what's going on and how difficult it has been for many of the companies that I work with, or many of our artists, many of our writers. Nobody's here to deny that 2021 is probably going to be even worse. So I wanted to concentrate with my colleagues in examining just this question on what we learned this year and what we can do to make 2021 not so bad and maybe even good. What we came out with, first of all, is a change in the model, complete change in the model. None of us feels like we need to physically be in any office space at all anymore. And that's, in a way, is liberating. It has consequences for the economy, of course, but you know, in the end, many of us will choose not to be stuck to an office anymore and have a more flexible relationship with our business day to day. That's certainly the first thing. That means that for us personally, there's more time to indulge ourselves in things we like to do, or to do sports, to read, whatever it is that we are inclined to do apart from work. The second thing that I and my colleagues have actually come up with is that we have learned to use instruments and things that we did not know how to use before. Live streaming is one such. We're working with our writers and with our artists to make sure that we can actually take the best advantage out of that. I don't want to go too much into it because I know it's one of the items that we will discuss later, and I dearly want to hear from some of you what your experience with that has been and what you're preparing to do. I would say that we have been digging into the ways in which we advertise and promote our music, and we are thinking of changes. We are thinking of making some things stronger and some other are going to be left aside, and we are going to make a stronger relationship with those companies that distribute our music. And definitely that's one of the very most important points, because we need to find allies within the music industry to make up for the space that we don't have on stages and other venues. That's more or less my view at the moment.
Brilliant. You covered all the aspects of the question there, you know, aha moments, realizations, and also ways to move forward no matter what the world looks like in the future. Chiara, how about you? What is something that you've had to overcome, and maybe something that turned out to be something that you didn't see coming but is working out well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, so it has been an horrible year in many ways, but in this year, I actually think I have learned a lot. There were many learnings for me. I actually quote Francesca about the reflection about our relationship with our own work. I think it's really interesting. And as part of that, something that I noticed a lot was that I actually think that in this year we tried at least to really look at people we work with as people, even before as colleagues. So when the pandemic started, and as I'm sure you know, Italy was the hardest hit and the first hit country. Actually, I had this incredibly overwhelming experience of colleagues from all around the world taking care of me and pinging me to ask, how are you? How do you feel? And all of that. And this is something that to me was really revealing, and that I have been doing a lot myself for the rest of the year. And also something that I brought a lot in the mentorship experience I had. So thinking first to your colleague as human beings and make sure that you get all the context they are living in. I think this is something that we, like in a normal world, we sometimes forget about it. We give things for granted. This year, nothing was for granted. And I think this was really important. Another quick thing, I think we have been building a lot of resilience, but also finding new ways to reach out to the audience. I used to do myself a lot of workshops and educational events in person, which meant traveling a lot and meeting a lot of people. Of course, I miss that a lot. I'm still shocked. I haven't been on a flight for 8 months at this point. But on the other hand, with online events, it was amazing to see hundreds of people being actually able to take part and to learn something, to get the content they needed. So this is something that made me think that we should probably complement this in the future as well, because we can't always give for granted that everyone can travel and be in the same place at the same time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chiara. I think you've hit a really good point there as well. As the world has gone through a lot, and we can't speak on behalf of everybody, but one thing we have learned is that no matter how far removed we are physically from each other, we have found in the flames that the world has gone up in ways of bringing people together. Someone quoted recently, the world has never been so divided and so one at the same time. Which is a really interesting conversation, and to see how different people in different industries are navigating this. Tasha created a whole new business during these tumultuous and uncertain times. Do tell us more.
Well, and I mean, so I've been working in music for 10 years, and I finally decided at the end of last year, at the end of 2019, to take the plunge and to start my own company and to go freelance and go at it alone. And I had this big dream that I've always been, I guess, too scared to do, because when you've got the security of a full-time job at a massive record label, why would you leave and then have all the uncertainties around it? So I set out on my own in January this year, and then by March, the world went, I was like, oh my goodness, I have finally taken the plunge, and now look what has happened. It couldn't have been the worst time. But do you know what, actually, despite everything that has happened, and kind of to Francesca and Chiara's points, it's actually been a really, really interesting year, I think, for two reasons. One, because for the first time, I think, in all of our lives, we've been allowed to just stop for a second. and to just breathe for a second. I think when the world went into lockdown, it was the first time we weren't ever allowed to leave our houses. And at first it was meant to be for 2 or 3 weeks, and everyone was a bit unsure about what this was going to mean and what was going to happen next. But we just had to just stop. And that was it. We had to take a breather. And for a second, you could kind of just think about life and what you liked about your life, what you wanted to change, what if you wanted to start a new hobby, if you wanted to start a new job, if you wanted to see more of your family, whatever it was. If I feel like it was the only time we've ever had to just breathe for a second and to slow down. I mean, especially living in London, everyone like works and lives at such a fast pace that you never really have time for yourself and for your family and for things that matter. And I feel like it really kind of just made us value everything we have a little bit more. And then I think for the second reason, I think it just made people, I guess, especially musics and creatives, just give a little bit more to the job. I think things felt a little bit repetitive at some points. You end up going into music releases, into campaigns, doing the same things time and time again, putting out artwork, just filling it out, doing a music video, just putting it out, rushing things just to get things out. And I think for the first time, because we weren't allowed to leave our houses, but we still wanted to service the world with music, we had to really, really think about the content we were putting out. We had to really think about how we can cut through all of this noise and just create something amazing with such a lack of resources for the first time ever. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed having to get more creative and having to use our brains again and think of new ways at the drop of a hat. Like looking at major record labels, for example, they still work in such a traditional way. You have staff there, you have staff working essentially a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You have to be at your desk by a certain time. You have a lunch break for 1 hour and you go home at 6, 7 p.m. and that's your day. So everything works so traditionally, but at the drop of a hat, the world had to just learn to work in a new way. The world had to just learn how to work remotely, work from home, work from wherever you are, work on your laptop, do Zooms, put on a live stream concert, do live panels like this. There's someone, I mean, I'm from London, there's someone from Italy, from France, from LA, like, and we are all here together having a conversation. I think if this was this time last year, we probably would have scratched our heads and thought it was hard to do this. And we probably would have spent a long time trying to prepare. But how are we going to pull this out of the bag? Are you sure that's going to work? We just did it. We just made it happen. And I think that's something I've really taken from this and really enjoyed working with everyone. And because we all just want to create good things. We work in music and it's such an exciting industry to work in, and we've just made it work. So yeah, that's my year.
Thank you, Tasha. Now, Gigi, based in a country where there's been no official lockdowns compared to the rest who've all been...
We're in lockdown here as of yesterday.
Do tell me.
Or actually, we're in mostly lockdown in Los Angeles. Yeah, that came down the pike yesterday. So, but we've been mostly locked down in various parts of time. I find this time of massive interest. I am of an age where I had small children for a while and was essentially oddly locked down with my beautiful 3 tiny children for a while, where my life was centralized in my home. And then a couple years ago, I was ill for a few months and I was centralized in my home while everyone was spinning outside. So to me, this is an interesting return. But everyone is in the same lockdown I've been at various points in time in my life. And I've been working digitally for many years. So suddenly everyone else is in my neighborhood. When everything started coming apart, I was teaching at UCLA part-time and working with several hundred students. So suddenly had to shift to taking the superpowers I had for working online and bring a lot of people with me. And so middle of March, I started talking to everyone I knew. And a lot of the funding for everything I was working on with all the work I do with various companies went away. But I started spending a lot of time listening to people's challenges and issues and what they were doing. And with about, 30 friends, we quickly, picking up on Tasha's comment, we said, could we bring all this together? So we brought together 900 registrants, 20-something countries, 30-something organizations, and brought together a 25-hour conference talking about what was happening around the world and what people were experiencing and what they were doing. And it's one of those things that no one would have shown up or even thought to show up a few years ago. Everyone was too busy to listen to each other's stories. And we took such joy in introducing people to other people doing fabulous things in other cities and countries they'd never met. And that's turned into business and relationships. And I sometimes tear up thinking about it, because it was turning all of our digital connections into lining people up with who else was doing some magical stuff. So that's turned into projects. That helps spur a new podcast that I've launched, but it's also, we're going to be doing the conference again, bringing the band back together, as people have been saying, in February, to see a year into all of this. Where have we gone? What have been the great joys that have been built? What have been the new businesses that have launched? What's working? And what are ways that we could be rebuilding things that we're doing differently and get inspired by other people? So we've been enjoying music educators finding each other that had never met before, artists now spending time multi-generationally with young people helping teach, and then making sure people in different cities who are facing similar things are actually knowing each other exists and getting inspired. So my work is so different than this time last year. And I'm sad at the reason why, but I'm joyful about the changes I'm seeing in people who've built digital skills or met whole new people to work with. So for a sad reason, I kind of feel like, my superpowers have kind of come up to bear.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. That was a really nice way of explaining what has happened and how it's going to move forward. I also realized I've never actually told anybody who I am. My name is Jyoti, and I myself am a DJ and presenter, but also work in broadcasting and directly with artists. So I find this conversation specifically interesting because a lot of the topics we will be discussing I've experienced or have been questioning. And I actually wanted to kick off with a very interesting question I saw come from the crowd, from Virginia to be exact. And it's specifically the last part of the question that I find fascinating. And maybe we can start with Tasha to answer this first. Music is more than ever global. The music industry is more than ever local. Now, do you think that the pandemic will have impacted this work model too? Can we develop an A&R work remotely too from now on? Because I also saw someone said that A&R has been done via WeTransfer and Dropbox and hasn't impacted on the business. Tasha, you've experienced at a label, as we mentioned before. Can you maybe explain what you think is going to happen?
Do you know what? If I'm honest, I feel like it's made the world feel smaller. And I feel like we can now, I could have a meeting with somebody now, right this second from LA, and then log off and have a meeting the second after with somebody from London. So I feel like actually I think it helps. I think the fact that you don't have to just jump on a plane, or you don't have to be at, I don't know, a Grammy party in LA to meet somebody. You could meet someone on Instagram or LinkedIn or the various kind of social networks online. I think everyone has just got to rethink about what their network is and how they feel comfortable connecting with people. I think it's very important to have your work profile set up online via whatever platform you think is best for you and for your line of work, whether it's your own website, which you kind of regularly update with your work and what you're doing, whether it's a LinkedIn, whether it's an Instagram, YouTube, whatever your platform is. I think just make sure that's super, super up to date and just continue networking online. Even with A&R work, I know it's tricky that people can't go out to gigs and hear people performing live or kind of going out for the coffees and the dinners that everyone loves to go and do. But again, you can do that remotely. I think the thing that we've all got to remember is that the whole world is in the same situation and the whole world wants to keep on working. So as a singer, I still want to get my music out. As a manager, I want to promote my artist. As a label, I want to sign. So we've just kind of got to think a little bit more outside the box at the moment to think about how we can connect. Because the job's still got to get done.
Thinking outside of the box, Francesca, you know, working directly with artists, you actually mentioned this briefly in your introduction. What are some traditional ways of working within your industry and your lane in the industry that have now changed? And how have they changed?
Well, certainly the A&R part has completely been revolutioned. It's different, and it's sad in a way, because we used to just have a very buzzing office, with apart from people that worked with me, there was always a bunch of artists in the studio. There was always someone just dropping in to get a coffee, and it was really lovely. But we're just doing the same online. I have seen more of my writers and artists in these last 6 or 7 months, 8 months of lockdown than I ever done before. We just make sure that we connect and make sure that we chat, and actually we have put together the most incredible cooperations, between our writers and Australian writers from other peer music companies, and that's never happened before. Not because the tools were not there, but just because we didn't think of it. It wasn't something that you do, and we just didn't think it was possible to overcome the difficulties. And now, my writers are cooperating with Swedish writers, with Australian writers, all over the world, and that's beautiful, because I'm not even anymore tied to a pool of artists and writers that are, in my neighborhood. I could be talking to a UK artist, and why not? It just doesn't make any difference anymore. So at the same time, my music is not tied to a sort of a country or within the confines of Italy, but we produce music that so many people enjoy, and it goes all over the place, and it's never been easier. And yes, I agree with you, Tasha. We didn't think of it. We spent an awful lot of time running around, catching planes. I mean, to do this, maybe some of us would have spent, I don't know, 3 days out of the office, not unable to do whatever we needed to do. And this has been so pleasant and so focused, and so, I hope, useful as well, and inspiring. And it gets done in the time that it takes in getting done, So I really enjoy this, and I think this has been a very, very positive change in my way of working.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to highlight a comment as well here. We've been hearing how things have been made easier, and sometimes I even think maybe everything that's happened now is everything that was going to happen, but over a span of 10 years. And we've just sped up the whole process, and we've been forced to learn quicker. There's a comment from Motown Joe, who does studio production, and he says, all remixes and productions are done via music sketches and notes. 2 days takes 2 weeks. So I guess it also just depends on what part of the industry you're in. Some people are finding themselves taking more time. But again, this might result in some sort of program, some sort of software, some sort of revolutionary idea that will make things easier, even for people like Motown Joe. Now, moving on to a topic that I know everyone has spoken about so much this year, and Chiara, we'll start with you. New revenue models have come to exist, and one of them, the most popular one that we've all experienced, seen, participated in, is streaming, the world of streaming. Now we've seen artists streaming live music to DJs, but also lots of talks and mentorship programs. Streaming takes place in very different shapes. But where do we think this is going to head into when certain part of our industry go back to normal? And then we're specifically talking about live performances and concerts and festivals. Where will then streaming be left in that equation?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Actually, Jyoti, I think you touched on a very interesting point when you say that the pandemic has kind of accelerated trends that were already there, like in the background, but weren't that important and that frequent to see as they are right now. And I think that's actually what we are seeing as well when it comes to generally speaking, diversifying revenues and live streaming. So something that I witnessed in the last years was that definitely the labels and same as the artists, they were doing many more things than compared to what was happening in the past, by diversifying their revenue models. And this is something that we have been seeing on YouTube as well. So of course, like music videos, they were like always been like the foundation of the content strategy, but suddenly we started to see artists uploading as well other kind of content, including, for instance, content that they created with brands. So with like product placement and brand partnerships being another revenue model added to that, and then we launched streaming platforms, so another model again. And right now, like, we are very focused as well, working with the labels on everything that is about alternative monetization. So, for instance, we have launched some features that allow the fans to directly support artists and creators, such as super chat and super stickers. And as well, we have a merchandising feature that goes in this direction. So all those features, they were already there, but definitely, like, this situation has made us invest and be much more focused on all of these. So to your point, I think that all these new models will definitely stay there in the longer term. I think there will be the more and more a diversification of all these models. And I think that what is really interesting for labels and artists is that by crafting and thinking about their strategy, they have now a huge number of assets and opportunities from the platform, and they can decide, depending on the story that they want to tell and how they want to engage with the fans, how to use all of them to actually own that story. So I think it's really interesting.
Thank you, for sure. And I guess you've touched on something that I will just throw into the group now, and actually someone in the chat has mentioned as well. Gigi, I'm going to put this to you. New marketing models that, because of this online internet and streaming phenomenon, is been introduced to us in the industry. You know, releasing music has now completely done a big switch. For example, Travis Scott releasing on Fortnite was a mind-blowing moment. But as someone mentioned in the chat here, like concerts like Dua Lipa's done virtually, this must impact the way we market releases and music and projects that are being brought out. Where does this leave the traditional models that we were used to, and how are we going to incorporate this in our normal or new normal way of dealing with releases?
There is so much happening on the new technology side, and I would suggest for those of you who don't know Sherry Who to follow her. She is a powerhouse thought leader in this space as a amazing 25-year-old journalist. She has her own VIP spaces she's building out in thought leadership with water and music. So if you haven't run into her, I would actually start with that part of it. There's a lot of things happening in terms of new technologies. So whether it's and one of the things Sherry tends to talk about is looking at the digital scarcity models. So how to look at VIP and other things to do so that you can take your fans who get identified out of streaming and actually find engagement opportunities. So whether it's Maestro and other tools that have come out for people to actually have, instead of speaking out into the digital dust and singing out into the digital dust, is that they're actually creating community-based engagements that then can feed back when concerts are back live. I think that the interesting thing is it black or white of going back or not going back. I think some of the big challenges is we're going to have long-term density issues. And what is the economics of having an event at 25 to 50% density? And a lot of cities are really wrangling with what that means as to, what does a contract look like as we go back? Those are changing dramatically as who's taking the risk of future events. What is it actually, what's the physical space of a concert going to be? Will they be in city centers where we're used to, or there's actually new venues opening up in many cities in many countries already out in the suburbs where people are moving to? So I think that it's not a switch we'll flip and we will be going back. A lot of it is that there's a lot of planning going on as to what does the new venue look like? Who owns it? Is it a multidisciplinary space? Um, and then if people are used to connecting digitally, do we need to rethink what that looks like? And largely, are people over 40 going to want to go out? So are we going to actually have an interesting question about the demographics of concerts? So we're in such a strange gap time, where everyone's trying to figure out where the dust is going to settle. But I do think the world we walk into will be a really different one that means taking marketing tools to know who your fans are, what their concerns are, how you build an economic model that actually works for 50% density, or whether we're really going to be looking at small events, outdoor events, taking priority first. And there's people in every community right now working with these questions and then trying to figure out how do we get fans comfortable to return, especially who are over 30 years old. Right now we've had it, at least in statistics in the United States, that the average person gets between 2 and 3 ticketed events a year before COVID. So, is it the fact that people are going to be pickier about where they go out? So you need to be actually able to super target your fans to get them to show up where you want them to be. Is it the fact that you can take all the data you are having out from streaming and building other CRM models and then be able to really target what you're doing to have a higher value ticket, higher value fan? There's so many conversations happening about this, as well as people getting together and designing new venue types, that there's some really interesting things afoot, but we're in for a real stretch for a while.
I hear you on it's so interesting. I hadn't even thought about the new demographic and what parts of the audience will navigate or gravitate to even. The next question, I'm just going to keep it organic and also with what's being said in the chat. And the next topic will be, let's start with Tasha, with specifically coming from an agency outlook. Someone said here in the chat that it seems like TikTok and IGTV are the new marketing / viral tools. And someone else also said that Patreon is the future. Grace Savage said so. Genuine connections with fans who are funding the artist directly. It has saved me in lockdown. Now, as a consumer of music myself, but also someone who had to figure out new ways of generating income if I wasn't playing in clubs anymore, that last part, both parts actually have been so interesting, because I have never spent so much money that I had before lying the same amount of money I had in my account. I've never spent so much directly purchasing music, but also merchandise or tickets to online sessions where someone talks you through the process or the thoughts behind lyrics, all these things that have existed before, but now we're kind of opening our eyes to building a genuine connection because we can't see people in person. What are your thoughts on this? And how does that impact your work even and campaigns that you have to work on?
I think similar to what we said earlier about having to just really keep adapting and changing the way you're working. I think to the first point, like TikTok is definitely huge. I do think that TikTok isn't for every single artist. So I think artists need to be really true to themselves when looking to that platform. A lot of artists now are thinking, oh, TikTok can make me a star and make my song go viral, but it doesn't work for everybody. So you should kind of look into why it does work and what kinds of content you should put on there. Instagram, IGTV is always a really great feature. Reels is like their newest feature and is actually something that they're pushing really heavily in the app now. So you'll notice that if you post a reel as opposed to a video, the algorithm will serve your reel a lot further and you'll get a lot more views using the reels because it is their new feature. So I think kind of just staying on top of what the new features are on each of your platforms is really important. I think the membership scheme thing that you're talking about is really interesting. I've seen that happen with quite a few people actually online, whether it's in music or fitness has actually been another one that I've noticed kind of really thrive in the kind of like membership strategy. For example, there's somebody that I've followed for a while called Kira London, and she's a personal trainer in London. She had quite a big following before lockdown, but then she really ended up using lockdown to her advantage and selling a membership program to her workouts, and there were daily workouts, and she sold them to at a really low price point, but to a huge group of people. And now she's got about 10,000 people kind of fully signed up in like a month-to-month subscription service to her personal workouts. I've seen stylists do the same thing. So stylists are putting up essentially courses. So they're making their own courses with like YouTube videos and content and kind of PDFs and like Q&As and one-to-one Zoom sessions. I've seen marketers doing the same thing, selling their services on like a one-to-one basis. So I think, again, it's just about trying to turn the switch a little bit and see how you can make money from certain areas. I think there's really interesting platforms. Like, look at OnlyFans, for example. I know that can be quite a controversial platform, but actually you can use it in a really interesting way. Taking away the seedy side of the app, you can use it to your advantage. And if you're a comedian, you could host shows on there. If you're a singer, you could put up exclusive content on there. Like, if you just get clever with these apps, I think kind of keeping that one-to-one fan interaction and making fans really feel like they're part of your journey, I think that is going to be something that really helps keep them going.
Brilliant. Francesca, do you know, especially for you working with creators directly, please give us some insight.
Yeah, I just wanted to address some part of what you said and what Tasha actually touched on. I agree that a direct link between the fans and the platforms, fans and whoever has been producing content in whatever way, be it the trainer or the musician or any other kind of artist. I actually subscribe to a cookery course to make sushi. So, there's we're all in it together. But I think it's very important to stress that it is the function that we perform, and when I say we, I mean labels, I mean publishers, I mean managers, is essential for our writers and our artists, because it was all in the first 2-3 words that Tasha said. TikTok is okay for some, it's not okay for others. She knows, they don't. So that's really the value that I place on our expertise, on our knowledge, and what we can do for the industry. So yeah, let's get on with everything direct, but let's not forget that we have a very important role in this.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. I have a question for Chiara before, and after that I will head into a question that's for Gigi from the crowd specifically. Excuse me. Chiara, I wanted to ask you, we've been talking about expertise and also, this conversation comes as a follow-up from the She Grows program in France and Italy. And, we have mentors, part of those programs in here today. How do we see this access to information, and specifically in a more supportive way? And I want to talk about mentorship and even, internships and work placement. We come from an era where it was almost normalized to do an internship unpaid. And that meant for a lot of people that came from backgrounds where they couldn't afford to do so, it has really hindered a lot of people. And, it's 2020 now. We're aware of what people's rights are and what is fair, even in the creative industries. And so things are changing, and a lot of companies and organizations are trying to make an effort to bring people closer to the information that can help nurture them. Where are your thoughts on this? What is something that we have to look forward to when it comes to these things?
Yeah, that's really a great question, and I think that so getting back to the learnings of 2020, I think probably if I had to summarize my biggest learning of this year, it would be learning. So learning is something that is always there. Like, it's the best way, it's actually the best asset that we can build really to keep growing, but also like to figure out in a context of uncertainty what we can do and how we can react to that. So I have to say that for me personally, being part of the mentorship program was really, really super valuable in this sense, because I learned a lot personally, and that helped me as well, like to think about the learning process. It was interesting, Francesca, you were talking before about cooking, and that's actually, I think, as well a great metaphor about the learning process. So if we think about learning process, when you are cooking something, you might start like just cooking and put ingredients together and something like this. But it's when you are actually telling someone else the recipe and how you do that thing, then is when you actually realize that you can cook that stuff. And I think that mentorship is pretty much this process. So really like figuring out from your experience what you can like transfer to other people. So I think it's really important. I think to your point that I feel there's really like a strong need to keep learning and to help people to learn in every moment of their career. And I think that this is something that when it comes as well to inclusion in companies, this is something that we need as like collectively to address as much as possible. So for what we can like be able to share with other people and to help people to get even more professional in what they do, to get knowledge. This is something that can help us to step up as a community and as a community of female professionals. I think it is really important. Also, something that I think when I think about this time of the pandemic, so the pandemic has also like an impact when it comes to your work life, in the sense that maybe before, when everyone was in the same office, like people were usually like more visible one to each other. It was just easier to share what they were doing and all of that. With everyone working from home, especially the ones that maybe are younger or more shy, become less visible to the others, and they need and it feels like it's more difficult for them to get promoted or to be properly recognized. So I think that we should all push for a culture of recognition and to inclusion, in the sense that, and also like a culture of self-promotion, and be more visible one to each other about what we do. So I think that these are like things I would like definitely to keep to myself to keep doing as well for the years to come.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that shesaid.so has done a brilliant job at that as well. Someone said, I love mentoring with She.grows. My mentee was incredible, and she got a new job during COVID, which was one of her goals. And I can actually speak for myself. 2-3 years ago, I informally got a mentor myself, goes by the name of Gio, based in Barcelona. OG of all OGs in the music industry. And I found myself a year later becoming a mentor myself with shesaid.so. And it's truly a network, and especially amongst, groups within the industry who are underrepresented, whether that's in gender, sex, belief, race, age, anything you can think of, to not only just soak it up, but to also pass it on. Gigi, there was a good question actually from someone who asked specifically, going back to your point about super targeted fans, are there any guides, resources, thought leaders, or tools that you'd recommend to learn more about this? I didn't want to miss that, because I think a lot of people would find this helpful.
And this could be a half-hour conversation, so I'll try to make this brief, because in many ways that there's a lot of people who've been powering through this and doing classes, workshops, having tools for a while now. I might nudge people to take a look at Bobby Borg's work overall. He has podcasts, books, etc., looking at some of these issues. Jay Gilbert from Label Logic has been doing a lot of classes and workshops on this. Of course, he's got Your Morning Coffee, which comes out to 10,000 music industry people on Fridays. If you don't get that, that's a free resource. And that now has a weekly podcast of summarizing new tools and opportunities. In terms of kind of broad swath, but to give you the information to wade through, of course, YouTube Music and other great tools have their insights under the hood. I like Chartmetric. You can see what happened yesterday all over the world, or almost all over the world, on your music, to be able to at least see the broad brush data. This is stuff I've been teaching for about 10 years at UCLA, and sadly we don't have any external classes, but I'm glad to follow up with anybody who wants to talk about resources that are out there. Because in many ways it's how to really understand under the hood who's spending money on your brand, who you want to. It's not just having a fraction of a penny per play coming out of it, but how do you generate the data to figure out which of those people will spend money with you and your artists, or yourself as an artist. So that a lot of it is kind of rolling up your sleeves, putting systems together. But there's some really good tools that are out there. I'm glad to talk about with anybody afterwards about that.
Thank you so much, Gigi. That was practical information. We love to
occasionally
see
practical.
it. It's important. It's important. Thank you so much. I'm very much aware that we have about 10 minutes left. I am also trying to get some questions from the audience in here, but something I definitely need to touch on before we say goodbye is the idea of, and we've been smacked around the head with this term this year, is diversity and inclusion. Now, we all know what has transpired this year for very unfortunate and sad reasons. But on the other end of that, we have seen companies and organizations being forced to finally make a change. And the question, Francesca, I'll ask you first, is, okay, so we are seeing companies trying to be more inclusive and trying to be more diverse in their hiring process. How do we make sure that it is not just an act of tokenism, which could be potentially very dangerous for people who end up in new positions? How do we combat that? And how do we make sure we do not go back to the way things were?
Okay, again, a very easy question for me. No, it's a very good question. I'm very happy that you asked me to contribute on this, because as you probably know, I'm actually the chair of Impala, which is the Association of Independent Labels in Europe. And we have been focusing on diversity and inclusion for the whole of the last 6 months. As you say, since unfortunate moments that we all lived through were a thing, we just never lost touch with this subject, and we actually followed it up all year with a task force working with Keith Harris. I'm sure many of you will know him, and ending up actually taking a diversity and inclusion course in November and December, which we are going to do our last session on the 10th of December. This is to say that what we are intending to do is to share this knowledge and share what we are learning out of this with all of the members of Impala, which is a very large share of the independent labels in Europe. And we are going to share with them what we learned. We're going to try and make sure that nobody takes a step forward and 2 steps back, that nobody makes a mistake of engaging in tokenism of any kind, but that we all make progress towards what seems to me a no-brainer, because it is a no-brainer and because it is a very powerful economic tool as well for companies. We are leaving behind so much talent and so much new ideas, so much strength and power, just based on what someone looks or whatever. That it's uncanny. So we will do our best to do that, and I'm sure that European labels are going to be on the forefront of this for a long time to come.
Thank you, Francesca. Also, I can't actually type back the G Talks. Yes, if you go to my Instagram, there's an email button there. You can always reach out to me. regarding mentorship. I am in my house, so I've got the time. Chiara, another one for you, and then actually, Tasha, I have a very specific question for you to round things up. Chiara, what is something that has really given you a little bit of faith or a little bit of hope in how people have come together under very difficult circumstances within the creative industry? We all know music has always been the heart of activism, right? But now it's spilled out from the arts side of things, so outside of the instruments, outside of the lyrics, and come into behind the scenes. What are you looking forward to, and what's been maybe something that really shocked you in a positive way?
Yeah, also a great question. Definitely, this topic has been very important this year, but it's not just. I mean, this year this topic has been on the spotlight, and let's really hope that this spotlight never goes away, and we keep working on this all together. I think that. To your point, something that really impressed me, and in the best positive way, was really when everyone did and we did as well, the Blackout Tuesday initiative. I love that initiative because it was really unifying everyone in the same moment, in the same industry, and actually that moment made me realize that the fight that we need to fight is not just a part. It's not just from one part of the society. It's it's the entire society that needs to fight for this. And so that to me was really revealing and gave me a lot of hope. And to that point, I think that as women, we are even closer to this topic, because if you to all these kind of topics. So inclusion for underrepresented groups and minorities, it's always like the first thing that should come to our minds, given that if we look at our history as women, I mean, we couldn't vote until like in Italy, like it has been in the 40s. So if we look back at our history, we can understand a lot this need to fight for everyone's rights and to join this.
Thank you so much. I know we've come to the last few questions, last few minutes. I just wanted to reiterate for everyone in the chat, there will be Google Docs shared, not just for you to leave your own details and to network with everybody else watching. There will be another one shared, which is Amber Horsburgh's Google Sheet of music marketing tools. So please do have a look at that. That is a little tip from Gigi herself. Thank you so much for that. Tasha, I thought for everyone watching towards the end of our conversation, what are some tips, some tricks, some books, some podcasts, some websites, anything you've come across that people who are watching today would find very helpful to look into? Anything where resources and knowledge are changed, or maybe even something that you've used personally?
Do you know what that I found really like the most useful is actually mentorship. And just connecting with other people in the industry. I feel like the music industry is something that is so hard to learn from a book, because the second you publish a book, it's outdated tomorrow, essentially. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like the internet, everything gets old super quick. And obviously there's some things you can learn in them which are amazing. There's actually a book, and the name has disappeared from my head, of course, but it's like the music industry Bible, and there's like kind of, they do a new edition every so often. So that's like a good Bible to have. I'll find it and I'll put it somewhere when someone else is asking a question. I'll Google it quickly. But for me, it's been mentorship, because I feel like there's nothing more you can gain than by asking someone about their own experiences in music. I think it all depends on who you are, male, female, what industry you're like, what kind of part of the industry you're trying to get into, what your like speciality is, what background you come from, what country you come from. Try to kind of find somebody that you really, really look up to, and just ask questions. Even if someone can't be your official mentor, like most people will always reply and answer 1 or 2 questions in an email or an Instagram DM or a LinkedIn message or something. I was lucky enough to meet somebody when I was super, super new to the industry. And she's kind of been my mentor like for years and years and years now. And just having her there and having had her experience kind of told to me through what she'd kind of lived through, I guess, for like the 5-10 years prior to me joining music was so helpful. It's a hard place to navigate. I think when you're not used to it, it's a hard place to get into. Looking from the outside in, everyone's like, how do I get into the music industry? Who do I talk to first? What do I do? Like setting up your social network, sending your first tweet, everyone freaks out because they're like, but nobody's going to see it. I have no followers. I'm talking to myself. Like, honestly, if you find someone that you can just ask questions to, it really, really does help you.
Great advice. And actually, I'm going to ask our other speakers to give, Gigi, we'll start with you. One sentence, one thought, one tip to leave everyone on.
One sentence, goodness gracious, that's not my skill group. No, I was going to say, though, that please come to amplifymusic.org. The opportunity to me right now is that you can time travel to anywhere you want to be. And even though we're Zoom fatigued, there's conferences all over the world where you can be finding a kindred spirit or learning something from. That Rio Music Market is next week. You could be in Brazil, goodness gracious, and you'll hear me talking again. But there's ways that you can be meeting people you never would have otherwise met. So even though you might be tired of talking to your colleagues on Zoom, go sit in on things and learn something new. We can have a cocktail at home, enjoy yourself. So more than one sentence, but take advantage. By the reason I say amplifymusic.org, we're going to start sending out a newsletter of events all over the world you can attend globally. So
Thank you so much, Gigi. Francesca, a final thought, a tip, anything you want to leave everyone with?
Yes, I would recommend everyone to stay in touch with their associations, with people they can learn from their mentors, and don't take their eyes off the ball. I mean, this is the moment where we all need to be super keyed in, be super attentive, and know what's happening. I go back to what I was saying before. Impala has a great website on which you can see what the industry, the independent music industry, thinks of the pandemic and thinks how to get out of it. There's a 5-year plan that you can look at and see whether it fits your organization, your company, yourself as a musician, and take inspiration from that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Chiara, it is your turn.
Thank you. Yeah, my tip would be to keep being always curious and keep learning. Well, on YouTube you can find a lot of stuff to learn, and also, like, if you want to check it out, you can also check youtube.com/artists, where we have a lot of resources for everyone in the music industry. And thank you again for this panel.
I'm going to go check that out. I hadn't even seen that myself. I want to thank all the brilliant speakers, Chiara, Francesca, Tasha, Gigi. Thank you so much for your insight, your knowledge, sharing that with us. And thank you, YouTube Music. Thank you, She Said So. Thank you, everyone watching. I hope, an hour goes by quickly when you're listening to people who know what they're talking about. I'll tell you that. I've been in many panels where I thought, are we done yet? Didn't think that today. I've learned things myself, and I think we're all in a process of learning and unlearning. I just figured, since everyone's giving a tip, if there's anyone watching who is more on the creator side of things, music, DJ, creating even online creatorship. I have a series on my IGTV called Tips and Tricks, and I give you all the inside information that people tend to not share with people. Everything from money, manager versus agent, how to get started, how to get demos on radio, anything you want to know how I've done it, I always share it. Go and have a look at that. I want to thank everyone involved today. It was a brilliant panel. This was recorded and will be uploaded as well, so keep your eyes on She Said So and the links that they'll be posting if you've missed anything. And we're just going to love you and leave you and make sure that we've made it this far. We've made it to the end of the year. Be proud of yourself. Big up yourself, because it's not been an easy time. And I think there's a lot of pressure on people to show something at the end of the year. And I think what you have to show for is that you're here and you're willing to give it another go again in the new year. So that's what I'd want to leave you all on. And thank you all, and see you very soon.
Thank you, Joy.
Thanks,
You've been brilliant. Thanks, everyone. It's been lovely.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Nice to meet everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.